chat. Don't forget to write the reply also, yeah? Let me just turn on my camera.
Before we start the round, I would like to remind all observers here, if you're a registered observer, you're welcome here. But if you're not, please please kindly leave from this building or from this Zoom meeting, because we're going to live stream this debate. So if you want to watch this debate, you might watch it on through the YouTube. So if you're not a registered observer, once again, we ask you to please leave this Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Sorry Kak, from Jawa Tengah yang UFC Gov Brian, it's for backup device ya Kak? Thank you.
Okay, so right now that is settled. Before we start, let us do some housekeeping to make sure that everyone remembers. Right.
Already, yeah.
So welcome to the Octofinal round. Congratulations to everyone here. Ooh, heart emoji, celebration emoji. Before we continue, a reminder that POIs are offered after the first and before the 7th minute. If your connection drops in the middle of your speech, there is a 2-minute waiting time maximum in which you are given the opportunity to deal with the connection drop. If you are not back by then, we're going to exercise other option. This will be a silent round. You are welcome to leave the breakout room after this because announcements will be held later. A camera should be on at all times. If you feel like for some reason your bandwidth is not good during your speech, you are allowed to turn off the camera during your speech. But if you are not speaking, please make sure that your camera are turned on at all times. Before you start speaking, make sure that you check your audio and make sure that you state your POI preferences. And then before your speech start, make sure that you count it down so everyone knows to start the same timer. That is also a reminder for everyone to have a timer. Make sure that you have an individual timer before and to be utilized in all speeches so you know when to give POIs. Right. So I think that's all. Without any further ado, let us proceed with the octofinal round, everyone. So I would like then to welcome, let me just find my timer because I've yet to find my timer. I would like to welcome the first government speaker to take the center screen, state your POI preference, count it down, and then we can start the debate. Here.
Before I'm delivering my speech, all Team Jateng speaker prefer to just unmute yourself for POI. Thank you. And wait, let me set my own timer. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. United States of America keep justifying their actions of repressive acts toward terrorism in justification of how they want to save lives, they want to protect the national security, and they want to have the conducivity of Middle East. But what happened in the next 20 years after the creation of negotiation with terrorists? You see how Middle East now is on chaos because of the interference of United States itself. You see how Syria is being reduced into a civil war. you see how how all over the Middle East war still prolonging, and we saw no end of the cycle, right? Team proposition stands for ending the negotiation with terrorists. But what is exactly the no negotiation with terrorists itself? This is created by George W. Bush back 20 years ago for just repressing the act of terrorism, especially in the Middle East or even in countries like the Pakistan or Afghanistan, and just starting wars against them with all violence expressions. Since then, the international policy of U.S. always related to suppressing terrorists with war, right? But how does the status quo look like? The status quo shows that how U.S. itself still keep attacking this terrorism with the system of like drone, or even giving the military groups toward this terrorist attack. But what exactly is the problem? We think that first, terrorists already label U.S. as the evil one for suppressing their action. That's why they will likely to keep retaliating on U.S. because they also have the anti-Western sentiment. Secondly, there's also the problem when U.S., even when they are able to kill the leader of Al-Qaeda, for instance, or even like Abdullah from ISIS itself, there's the problem of how Al-Qaeda also break up to ISIS and Hezbollah later on, or even in the second things, ISIS also have the conditions of resurgence of ISIS in the Middle East. What this problem shows to you how the zero-sum activity and policy result of United States. But thirdly, there's also the one budgeting too much. You see how Donald Trump making their country is also very burdening in terms of military budget. We think that this is also very harmful for US, and there's no resolution for this. So what are our models? First, we will stop all kind of no negotiation form. We will not keep attacking the terrorists aggressively. We will open dialogue, talking with the terrorists in the diplomatic way. We will give them the political legitimacy stance and give them the alternative to be a political party. For instance, if they still want to embrace their value, what happened like Hamas Fatah in Palestine, or even Shia Sunni Kurds in Iraq. This is what will be happen under proposition world. So what will you have is not the violence attack itself, but all how there's this possibility of conducive approach in a political way for this terrorist acts also. But secondly, we also have the preventive measures that countries that are still vulnerable with terrorism still have peacekeepers army from United Nations. We prefer this because they are the neutral body of army that is also commonly known for to setting a security with no intention of actually with no self-interest of each country, or even to kill people on the ground as well. Two things in my speech. First, I want to explain what is the current status quo looks like. Secondly, I want to talk about why this is morally justified for US to stop the policy. But before moving on, is there any POI? No? Okay, let's continue. We think that how US repressive attack of terrorism is only about how they are blaming the terrorists, right? They are using the violence, and for 20 years this is never solved, and how the terrorists still have the retaliation always. But why this is not effective? We think the terrorists have two main characteristics. First, they are protecting their belief with their terrorist action. They have a narrative, it's better to die and go to heaven rather than you are not retaliating to the kafir one, for example. If they are going into war, and then US also have it keep coming to the action itself, they will have legitimate reason to actually retaliate to US action, ladies and gentlemen. What does this mean? It means that they are also labeling US as the evil one, ladies and gentlemen. But under the second characteristic, because of the US aggressiveness itself, they also and US always attack. That's why they don't have any kind of likelihood to actually believe in United States or even the compromise that will be happen. This is what would look like in our opposition world when you are just relying on the wars and the prolonging of action itself, ladies and gentlemen. But we think that this is what will be happen in their side of the house on how the prolonging of war itself will keep dealing with the casualties on the Middle East ground, how innocent people will be killed, or even there's also still harm to the United States, like how it will be suppressing the budget, for instance. But second argument, why this is morally justified, right? I think we have to debate this on the ground of security, on how we have to save the life and the Middle East conducively.
Before that,
right? We think that there's too much interference already in Middle East that's causing more chaos, even with the United States intervention. But before moving on, yes, I'll take your PI.
If you're saying that they have no likelihood to believe in US in the very first place because US do bombing, for example, why do you think that negotiation will work in your under of the house?
Yeah, I will explain it after this. Please listen carefully. But okay, continuing. That's why if there are too much interference in the Middle East, there will be more chaos, right? Even if you want to say that United States already killed the leader, for instance, like Al Qaeda or even the leader of ISIS, they're true again. That's why the zero sum is actually exists. That will be what will have opposition prove to you why their policy will not be a zero sum and why the casualty sacrificial is okay for United States selfish interest, because we think that this is very immoral, right? But okay, let's jump to the question why terrorists likely want to negotiate, right? Two folds of this. First, because reason why the ISIS or even terrorism attack is because of the US aggressiveness itself. What does this mean? It means that if US stop, they will sending the message to cease fires first instant. There will be more likely for the terrorist action to be cooled down. But secondly, why this is actually why our models will give more likelihood of ceasefires? Giving legitimate stance on their religious belief means that as US they will acknowledge the stance, right? Because what ISIS want, like for example, they want creating a Khilafah country, for example, they want their stances of religious belief want to be acknowledged, right? Means that we give them the alternative to be a political party, for instance. This will be like the case of Hamas, Fatah that also become a political party in Palestine, or even like the Shia and Kurdish itself that be a political party in Iraq. And what this gives to you? This gives to you that Hamas and Fatah also have a reconciliation in 2016, and Hamas is actually agreeing on having ceasefires between Palestine and Israel. This is also what happened to Iraq itself. After Saddam Hussein died, there's also the legitimacy of this Shia and Kurdish. That's why the developing democracy in there is actually more stable compared to those who like Syria, for instance. What is exactly the comparative? We think that under our side, terrorists will not keep recruiting members for action. Means that there will be less people to be sacrificed, ladies and gentlemen. If opposition want to say that okay, terrorist is still offensive, but in the end of the day, the comparative is the harm, right? How opposition side of the house will still prolonging the war with no kind of relevancy in the end of the day. And how, if opposition want to say that we give the justification of terrorism to attack, we think that this is not going to be happen, right? Because in the end of the day, this kinds of negotiation of open dialogue itself will require a conducive situation when all of the stances itself will have the position to actually negotiate and compromise. This is why likely in proposition world you will get the negotiation and reconciliation. We're very proud to propose stand with them, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, first speaker of proposition. Let me just sort my windows a bit here. Okay. Right. Thank you for that first speech. Now I welcome to the center of the screen first speaker from opposition. Before you start, make sure you state your PRI preference. Check your mic and your audio, and then we can begin.
Hello, am I audible?
Why did you do what happened?
All right, please give me time to set my timers first. I will start. My preferred POI method is please just directly unmute yourself and directly say POI. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Tell the story of 911 to US citizens, and I guarantee you all of their past traumas, all of their forgotten traumas will come back, and they will continue to always revolve around the narrative that they are that they will continue to be miserable because of this narrative, right? Let me explain to you what 911 has already created to you as three main things. First of all, it created a big economic background to United States at the time. Second of all, we say that it's also caused the loss of many, many lives, especially when we know that when the World Trade Center broke down, or many people was in that building. And third of all, we say that it creates a chaotic governmental system because what they planned before, and they did not see this coming, and it happened, right? Hence why we say that we want to prevent these kinds of issues to reoccur again. And we say that that's why we still have to have the no negotiation to terrorist policy, right? But before my substantives, I would or I would propose a mechanism from opposition. Our mechanism as opposition is that we want to continue the no negotiation policy with terrorists, right? What does this mean? Two things. First of all, meaning that if we really want to put deterrence towards these terrorist groups, we want to execute first. We want to do execution to every radical group member that we find. Either it is by torturing them, decapitating them, and so on and so forth. But second of all, we say that we are also going to directly attack and bomb the base if we can find them. Like, why does opposition want to pursue this mechanism? Because we believe that this is the only way that we can actually let them know what they have already done is doing something very, very bad and is creating a very, very suffering situation towards us, right? And we say that this mechanism is actually already been proven on how US managed to kill Osama bin Laden because of what happened to the World Trade Center, right? But 2 points of rebuttals. First of all, upon their whole mechanism and argumentation talking about how they want to conduct these open dialogues, but they themselves say that US is these terrorist groups
points, sir.
No, thank you. These US groups are the evil one to these terrorist countries. They must prove first why the narrative of US is the evil one is already neutralized on themselves first. How are they going to neutralize that narrative first before engaging towards US, right? Because if this narrative is not going to end at the end of the day, there's no engagement, right? But second point of rebuttal, talking about they want to make a conducive situation to happen and so on and so forth. We say that conducive situation is less likely to happen due to the fact that right now engagement still exists due to there's no communication, and how these terrorist groups will always look at US as an evil being, right? And even if, for example, it's going to actually happen at the end of the day, we say that it's going to take too much time, and at that time being, these terrorist groups will continue their actions of terrorizing terrorizing US and other countries, right? Two substantives. First, talking about yes.
So please explain to us why the researchers will not access in your side of the house, because we think that our mechanism in the past is not enough if we just only doing the war. So we need this negotiation. Thank you.
I'm going to explain that on my argumentations. Two things. First of all, talking about why it's actually not justified to negotiate anymore. But second, I'm also going to explain why it's not effective to negotiate. First of all, talking about why it's not justified to begin with to negotiate, right? Panels notice that we say that these terrorists are such cruel beings, right? As I've already told to you that they have already created such big impacts to lives, to the moment where so many people from all around the world always suffer from the narrative of always grieving from these terrorism actions to begin with. As I've already explained to you, 911, right? What's their actions to begin with? They attack innocent lives. They enjoy doing it due to the fact that what causes these actions or these terrorism actions to happen to begin with is their ideology, right? But Thanos, why to begin with changing their ideology will not happen, right? Because basically, to begin with, they are already indoctrinated by radical ideas, right? If you notice how now terrorist groups or members of terrorist groups are being indoctrinated by ideologies such as, if you bomb these countries, if you bomb this, you are going to get jihad, or you are directly going to enter heaven, right? We say that this kind of narratives is very hard to change due to the fact that it's already standing in their religious beliefs. It's already standing in their ideology. It's already inside of themselves, and it's already their main goal. Their brain is already set up to be that way, right? Hence why we say that it's to begin at the very beginning, we are not likely to even enter their minds to even give a nuance of negotiation, right? Because Panos, notice that under proposition's proposal, the likelihood of you want to compromising is very, very less, right? As I've already explained to you. Because to begin with, their corrupted minds will not be neutralized anyway. There is no mechanism of neutralization that will actually happen, right? But even if at the end of the day, there is still a mechanism of neutralization, but we cannot still justify the cost of terrorism that they have already done, right? Hence why we have already told you that we want to conduct counter-terrorism on how we want to at least torture them and even kill them, because we want to make them feel what we have already felt in the past. That's the only way that they will understand, due to the non-existent rational mind that they have, right? They are not rational to even think about their actions to begin with, right? But let's just say, right, if the opposite, I'm going to preempt this. Even if, for example, a government side is going to come here and say that, well, these terrorists are already suffering before they become terrorists. They suffer under poverty, lack of education, and so on and so forth. Panos, we say that if this is the main reason why they become terrorists, we say that no, we won't accept this premise, due to the fact that right now, most suffering people still have other alternatives to begin with. For example, now some people still choose to live under poverty. They don't pursue terrorism actions because they know that it's not bad. The fact that they want to pursue the terrorist actions and that they want to enter terrorism groups to begin with already proves to you that they're already corrupt from the beginning. And it's already hard to change, right? Second substantive is going to talk about how it's not going to be effective at all to negotiate, right? Panos, notice that negotiation shows that it's going to show that terrorist groups have a decent chance of success. It gives them a narrative that they are stronger and and that other countries are afraid of them, right? How is this so? Because the fact that United States, literally their enemy, is trying to negotiate with them, if the reason of U.S. negotiating is because they're afraid that these terrorists are going to counter them, it's going to create a narrative that oh, they're actually afraid of us trying to bomb them back, and we are actually more stronger than them, right? If we give them this nuance, what is it going to create? It's eventually going to happen. It's going to open chances for these groups to actually recruit more people, right? They can just use this narrative, they can counter narrative and say that, hey, United States are even afraid of us. United States are even they also want to compromise with us. So why won't you hesitate to join? Because at the end of the day, we are the strongest ones. So that's why I've already proven to you on one, why it's not justified to negotiate with them, and the likelihood is very non-existent. And second of all, I've already explained to you why it's not effective to negotiate, because at the end of the day, it will add up more members of corrupt groups and radical extremists. At the end of the day, vote for opposition.
Okay, thank you. First opposition speaker. Let me just reply some of the concerns here. Right. Let us proceed with the debate. I would like to welcome the second proposition speaker to the center of the screen. Whenever you are ready, state your team has stated the preference there. Count it down and we can start.
Ini. Hello, I'm audible. All right.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Member of this house, before going to my extensions, several rebuttals toward their side of the house. So the first idea, so before that, when they are saying a lot of points about how it is cost a lot of life of many people's life and how it already create a chaotic government system. I think those all things that are actually could being continued in the side of the house when they are not choosing to be a reconciliations, right? So we think that's why those points or those things that we want to achieve is not going to have an aggressiveness from the very first place, right? So moving to my rebuttal. So the first idea is on the idea when they are saying that giving the sanction will put them in deterrence. We think that my previous speaker already told you that how the radicalisms, the aggressiveness that those terrorists keep bringing on us is because of the sentiment feelings that built by U.S. aggressiveness in the past, right? So we think that if we want to actually make them realize to not doing any radicalism first, their case when they're put as sanctions is not going to put any deterrence, because what actually deterrence means? Deterrence means when they're actually feeling guilt or shifting that they are not who are the one who are in fault or do not want to reconcile with US because maybe they think they think they are the one the fault. But actually, the fact that actually those terrorist organizations are thinking that actually they are not the one who fault. They are not the one who think that need to take a reconcile with US, or they think the one who think that US is the one who is cruel, right? So we think that giving sanction is not going to make them actually enlightenment. What do we need to actually make them realize or stop this radicalism is actually when we are giving this enlightenment because of it manifests on how if we give a fire with also fire, it will not just empowering the fire and not going to just giving any enlightenment, right? So in comparison, if we would actually give this awareness of to these terrorist organizations that to make them actually a mindset that actually both sides it's not cruel or both sides is actually need to reconcile is when we are opening this room of negotiation, right? Because in this opening room of negotiation, we'll actually open up the ideology and then will be exist two sign of communications and will likely to give both benefits and both interest beneficiaries for both side of the house, right? So we think that if we want actually stop the radicalism from terrorists, is what do we mean here is not just putting more sanctions but actually enlightenment with ideology discussion, right? So second rebuttal on their idea of how the impact when they are saying that in their case, they are the one who will likely to reduce the requirement of military power, right? We think no. In their side of the house, when this anti-Western narrative being upheld, this is the one who likely to make a radical things, and this is the one who likely to make the one who push themselves to require more military power, right? Because they want to recruit members with a narrative of evil Western. That's why the terrorist chain is prolonging in Middle East. Like requirement chains always there. Terrorists keep grow, no future. There won't be any futures because of where Middle East can be conducive, right? So that's, we think that how actually in the side of the house, because of this anti-Western narrative will be still going to be upheld. I think they are the one who will likely to create more like a preparations of these terrorists to create more requirement for the military service, right? So before that, I need PI. No, all right, moving to my extensions. I'm going to address two questions in this extension. First one on the impact of prolonging war. Firstly, the prolonging war will actually create a lot of casualties, right? What my previous speaker already told you that how with attack or no negotiation from US, like what we already acknowledged, how US put a lot of drone missiles that harming a lot of innocent civilians. Like in principle, it's immorally unjust because they do not because there are a lot of innocent civilians that not participate in ideology war because that's too much casualties is very not comparable with the threat of that they want to pursue, right? So And moreover, two casualties will be lead to have a lot of more power or feelings to get revenge, because it's already ideology war, and plus that have a revenge that they think that their family is being killed and a lot of things. And second of all, about how is prolonging war will likely harming the budget of the academic budget of USA, for instance, right? Because US society demand for Donald Trump from societies to stop war, because budgeting on military is too much, and also George W. Bush era nearing recessions because of this military budget, right? So society doesn't want this to happen again. Society just want a peace, doesn't want to insecure again. Society also always grieving for those who always goes to military and die each year and demand for negotiations to access. So we think that because of this harming the budget of academics in US, and also what is actually the demand of society to stop this war and demand for the negotiations, I think we need to actually stop this prolonging war, right? So second idea on how in our side of the house, when we actually do these negotiations, we likely to reducing the stigma about Islamophobia or post-trauma fear in leading to the safety feelings towards US civilians at the end of the day, right? We think that in negotiation, we likely actually give this platform from each politician's representative from each side, both US and terrorists. This is the moment when the expertise could share each other ideology, each other opinions, each other concern with a calm state, and with healthy discussions, accepting the concern or issue that they might have hard feelings toward each other, assumptions toward each other that they are something, or throwing a lot of like assumption that they are actually giving toward hard feelings, or they are accusing one each other. This is healthy discussion, opening up a lot of ideology. This is when actually the acceptance of each ideology will be happen. And second of all, why this terrorist side actually have to have the interest to actually open up the discussions, because they want to have the legitimate stance or political positions in international diplomacy. Their interest to make their own political party in their origin, to cater their own ideology at the end of the day, right? So, for example, like how Iraq want to have a Kurdish Shia Sunni political party, or Palestine with Hamas and Fatah. This is at the very least, politicians maintain each other their relationship, trying to maintain each other their relationship, ideology acceptance toward each other. Because and what happened in society? Society will feel less likely to feel not getting attacked, because the leader, each leader already who are the one who lead or control the order or decisions of terrorist organizations already being reconciled or opening up a room of negotiations that are actually being handled or controlled with the experts or the leader from the organizations. So in conclusion, society will reduce the Islamophobia or other post-trauma things, because that's the most important thing in current status quo, about how in vulnerable situations in COVID-19 era, they face a lot of crisis and they need this feeling of safety that are actually the leader of each side already getting along better, right? But even if at the end, the Islamophobia of this post-trauma still exists, I think it both happen, and we don't justifying to make them focus on creating capital, recruit military radicalism, because shifting the focus on diplomatic way, political development, and that's why we are proud.
Right, thank you for second proposition speaker. A reminder that after 8 minutes and 20 seconds, adjudicators will no longer be taking notes. Right, I would like to welcome now the second opposition speaker to the center of the screen. Whenever you are ready, state your preferred QI method, count it down, and then we can start.
Am I audible?
Could you try again?
Am I audible?
It's very echoey. Do you happen to have earphones, headphones that can help?
I'll try use my reference device.
Okay.
Am I audible now?
No, this is better.
Okay, wait. starting my speech. My preferred PI method is just unmute your mic and yeah, I'll accept if I can. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. My LO already told you about how it is really not justified to actually negotiate with them and so far. Consider the fact that they already kill a lot of people. Consider the fact that there are two extremists to begin with, like a mindless piece. Like, at least I want proposition to actually try to negate this principle, but unfortunately they cannot. So I think that this principle still stands in this debate, right? Oh, one main instruction in my speech, how in the Sabta house they're just going to create more victims, right? But for that, several responses towards the side. First response is that when they try to say that, yeah, just let them become political party and so on and so forth, I think this is really contradictory because their first speaker talk about how they do not trust US to begin with. Why then they suddenly, just because you offer them to be political party, they will suddenly want to accept that if they already do not trust it to begin with. But secondly, I want to question the legitimacy for them to actually be a political party, right? I want to bring an example about neo-Nazi, for example, right? We said that neo-Nazi in the past is most likely the same with the terrorist group in the sekarang status quo about the how they create victims and so forth. Right? We said that they also define what they believe, right? Just because what their prime minister already explained to us. But we say that people still oppose them anyway and not supporting them just because the fact that they create a lot of victims. This shows us two things. One, we say that it is really not legitimate to let them become a political party, considering the fact that they kill a lot of people, they create a lot of victims. They are too extremists to be a political party to begin with. But secondly, we said that people are still not going to support them, even if in their best case that they still let them to be a political party, for example. Why is this important? Because if people do not want to support them, then they will think that they will have no reason to step up to be a political party to begin with. Because if people oppose them and so forth, they're just not going to be elected. No reason to accept this offer. But secondly, when we talk about sanctions and so forth, we never said that we are going to give them sanctions. What we said that we are still going to stick with the status quo, and we bomb their base when we do decapitation, like for example taking their leader and kill their leader, like Osama bin Laden, for example, and so on and so forth. Why is this then effective? Because we say that because we take down their leader, like reducing the capacity of their militarism. But thirdly, they talk about revenge, like it will prolong war. Yes, we consider that this might happen, but at least they can only win this point if they can prove to us why the negotiation will be effective. Because we see that negotiation will not be effective at all under the house, considering all the reason I've explained for also a leader of opposition. Right? But lastly, on the worst case scenario, even if under the house, like for example, bombing and so on and so forth, is not that effective, I think that it's still going to be much more under the house. This, my extension will answer this, right? But fourthly, they talk about the room of negotiation. One, they never explain to us why is there even no room of negotiation to begin, because of the fact that they already do not trust US to begin, because of the fact that they already retaliate and being too radicalized and extremist to begin with. But lastly, on their point about how they are going to reduce Islamophobia, for example, I don't think so. I don't think just because you let them become a political party in the best case scenario will suddenly reduce Islamophobia. There are still step-by-step analysis that they skip and then have the burden to explain all of this step-by-step analysis of why this is likely to reduce Islamophobia to begin with. But yeah, sure.
We think that under our side of the house, this kinds of open negotiation is actually neutralizing the anti-Western radical narrative to cut the change of terrorism recruitment. So please explain to us why in your side of the house this will be happen and the anti-Western narrative will actually be neutralized.
Yeah,
I will answer that.
I will answer it later, right? But here's the thing. When you want to talk Islamophobia, I think it's still unlikely in the South House. Why is this the case? Because we said that people already have the phobia anyway. Phobia from 9/11, for example, when it created a lot of victims because causing Islamophobia to be and so on and so forth. If proposition cannot prove to us why this will be effective, their benefit of reducing Islamophobia will not fly. First issue then, is this actually my extension? Two layers. I'm going to explain to you why under Sabta they're going to make things worse of two layers. First layer, why this will create more victims. Secondly, why this will make terrorist recruitment even worse under Sabta House. First layer, then how this will create more victims under Sabta House. We said that when negotiating with terrorists, there will be a priority of order of who you are going to negotiate with first, or right. Meaning, naturally, the most dangerous groups will be the one who you want to prioritize to negotiate first, right? Like, for example, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or terrorists with high position or really, basically high demand to be taken down and so on and so forth. But why is this something that is bad? Because this causes arms race between the terrorists to kill and torture and attack as many people as possible to get the attention, to get this negotiation, the earliest, the better, and so on and so forth. So actually, in this layer also, I want to debunk that actually negotiation that exists in status quo is not letting them to be a political party, but the negotiation that exists is, for example, offering them money, like for example, $10 million and so on and so forth, right? So I think that their whole mechanism is something that is literally not strategy to begin with. But even if they want to take the stance, I'm going to engage with that later. Back to my case. On top of that, is that terrorists will most likely kill and torture more and more people to get as good leverage as possible. So he said that under the of the house, terrorists will think that if I kill a city, I can get $10 million. If I kill two cities, I will get twice the amount and so on and so forth. I'm going to get all of this money and benefit. So more likely, even smallest terrorists in under the house will have the leverage and incentive to kill more people, to be as big as possible, to get the traction, so that the US to begin with want to offer them all of this money and all of these benefits and so on and so forth. They need to prove why it is unlikely or why, even if it's likely, it's still going to be better in the soft house. Right? But here's the thing. Even so, we said that it's still going bad. It's still going to be bad. Why is this the case? Because we are negotiating with terrorists, not with rational actor. Why are they irrational? We said that they are already corrupted. They are being too radicalized to begin with. This is actually a different case with armed or weaponized protester or insurgencies. Well, they are just people who simply have weapons and not kill as many people as at all. But we talk about terrorists who are radicalized to begin with, terrorists who do not have their rational mind to begin with, terrorists who are a mindless beast to begin with, whose interest is only to kill as many people as possible. Consider the fact that they kill a lot of people, they do a lot of bombing, for example. Like they take people's resources, they take poor countries' resources, poor countries' lands, and so forth, and they take those as their base. Proposition cannot run away from this burden just by saying that, yeah, it's their form of retaliation. Because even if it's form of their retaliation, we still think that it is unjustified to begin with, consider the fact that they create a lot of victims to begin with. But second layer then, why then under soft house, they will create more easier job for terrorist recruitment, right? We said that in status quo, we said that terrorists use narrative, like for example, religious narrative or any oppression narrative to recruit people. But they are also seen as pretty much suicide mission with no end in sight, no chance of success, no so forth. So we said that not actually many people join terrorist group in status quo. But assuming God's best case scenario where they can negotiate well, it will just make terrorist group seems like they are the group with a decent chance of success. They can now say that, look, just join us, just join of our organization. Even US want to negotiate with us, join us, because if you join us terrorists, you and create as many killing as possible, it will create a real leverage for US to offer you position in political party or make US offer you a lot of millions of money. It's going to be much worse under the Sabta House, creating more and more terrorists under the Sabta House. In conclusion, my extension proves to you two things. One, the Sabta House, it's still going to be much more creating more victims because of armed race and so forth, because they want to get this leverage. Secondly, the Sabta House will only make terrorist recruitment easier for opposition.
Okay, thank you for second speaker from opposition. A reminder that since you guys are in the same room, when you are discussing with one another, please keep that noise to a minimum so that we can hear if POIs are being made. Right, let us continue. I will now like to welcome the third speaker from proposition to the center screen. Whenever you are ready, count it down so we can begin.
Am I audible? I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Member of the House, I think both sides want peace between the terrorism also with the United States. But at least in our side of the House, we already try something new with more explanation and guarantee way, also a shorter time, also less casualties compared to the side of the House. That we also still question like until when the proposal of doing war will end at the end of the day, or how this acceptance will access at the end of the day. Because that's the main point or the tipping point that should be answered in this debate, right? I have, before I move to my classes, several independent rebuttals. When they are glorifying the Islamophobia will exist in the moment when we don't do the negotiation, we still do the negotiation. We say that even if Islamophobia exists, we say it exists in both sides. But at the very least, in our side of the House, we don't justifying them to make focus on creating the capital, recruitment military, or pursuing more the radicalism, or even anti-Western, or even hate United States of America in the other day. The shifting will be focused on the diplomatic way, or even the political development or the political position. This is why we say the political party is very important at the very first place in order to make them have the voices or chances or even the platform to talk, right? Second of all, we believe that political parties will suddenly trust the US to act, we say it's to extremists, to the political party that no one will support in the end of the day. But at least in our side of the House, we give a platform for the terrorists itself to actually neutralize the anti-Western radical narrative, to cut the chain of the terrorist requirement, and at least US shows the intention is not to be more aggressive to fighting against the terrorists. But if they also fail to answer this, why the terrorists will be suddenly high, or it will be really bad in the other day. And second of all, we believe that why the small terrorists will not torturing people in the other day, ladies and gentlemen, because those who want to go to the negotiation actually can go without any kind of the highlight. US has the spreading of the military bases in the Middle East that can proportionately targeting terrorists. But even if, assuming that happened, preventive measures or the peacekeeper can still pay attention, because not the big scale that is here to be stopped or prevents in the other day. I have 2 point of classes here. First, whether or not is also in line with the US interest, also giving the peace in the other day, and second of all, of course, the aftermath and the outcome, right? Moving on to the first class. But before that, any POI? All right, continuing to my side. What our side? Yes, please.
Can you prove to us were there going to be any incentive for political party to support this, because it's going to be seen as political suicide for you to support or justify any movement or negotiation with terrorism, sir?
We don't say that we are funding them, for example. At least we already accept and try a better way compared to the side of the House. You just only were creating a war, and you also yourself has never proved to why it's justified to doing the war and the tons of innocent people, not just only from the US but also from the ISIS death in that day. This is why we say that people's life is very matter in our side, right? Okay, moving on to my first class. We think that our side of the House already proved to you that US is labeled as a evil, and there is also researchers or the retaliation between from the terrorists towards the US, and US also spend a lot of big budgets towards the military in this case, ladies and gentlemen. The problem in this status quo is not solved because they just simply said terrorists deserve to die, and US don't believe that. And the side of the House stated, okay, the terrorists, why in the end of the day, terrorists will likely to listen to US in the moment when terrorists and US already clash at the very first place. We never try to negotiate just only blaming them at the very first place. We will try something better and also less casualties compared to the rest of the House. Moreover, we think that in the past case, this negotiation also exists. For example, like the Bill Clinton negotiated in PLO and create the peace in the Middle East, for example, or even like the British government, like John Major, also talked with Iraq in 1990s, ladies and gentlemen. There's also an initiative for you to talk in the other day. But even if they don't want to hear it and still do the war or even getting more stronger in the other day, we think no, ladies and gentlemen, because there is no other reasons for you to more resurgence in the other day, because US also less aggressive, and also ISIS also want the acceptance from the society or even the world, or creating Islamic is not peace, not Islamophobia like in the status quo. They're also rational enough. But in the very worst case scenario, at least there is no reason for you to anti-Western more or even creating the war in the end of the day. Then they come in this debate stating, okay, no. The trauma will come back like the 9/11. It caused many people death in the other day, ladies and gentlemen. But this is why the side of the House never proved to us why people death is really justified, or until what time you will also justifying the war or even want to prolonging the war in the other day. day. They come again by stating, we want to neutralize them because conducive condition. They are cruel people. They are killing many people. They are doctrinized and doctrinized people in the end of the day. And they say that people become the terrorists because they are poor in the end of the day. What's our response for this case? War is never ended in the end of the day from both sides between the terrorists itself, also between the United States of America in the end of the day. We don't even see them as a cruel person. We say that human is very dynamic and they also have the potential to change or opportunity to be better in the end of the day. Compared to the side of the heart, this is only demonizing and antagonizing the terrorists is likely really bad, and they cannot even have deserved to be mercy in the end of the day. The purpose of the doctrinize that you claim is because they need to fight the US at the end of the day. This is why we say it will likely happen in the rest of the house. And people become poor is also caused by the war. That is exactly your proposal and in the very first place. This is why the effectivity will likely happen more to doing doctrination or requirement more in the side of the house. We, at least in our side of the house, is more cheaper, not costly. The US in fighting recession, they need more concern just only concerning a small military budget that it costs very much, but in the end of the day, the likelihood will also still question in the other relation. And they said outside of the house, in the moment when we don't do negotiation, it shows that we are afraid towards terrorism. We say no, we just only showing to you that we use a soft approach, but even if it's access, it's perfectly fine. At least we already decreed our aggressive towards the terrorists in the end of the day, that we say is really better. Also inland the interest also can create the peace in the end of the day. Moving on to my second class, but before that, any POI? All right, continuing to my case, our side, yes, please.
Okay, so there's platform to calm down, but incentive for the platform to be peaceful or suppressive is not there. Just because the discussion doesn't guarantee that it's going to be productive. Oh well. Discussion between Trump and Kim Jong-un exists, but North Korea is still crazy anyway. How you're going to justify that, sir?
The question is ever your side give the chance for the terrorism to say something, to say what they want in the other day? This is never access your side of the house. At least in our side of the house, we give them chance to talk exactly what you want, exactly what the discussion will access in our side of the house, right? This is never proven in your side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. What our side brings to you, we believe that USA in recession and doing war, it's a good time for negotiation because in this current pandemic, there is not even people doing war in the other days, so it's the right time for you as a same bargaining position, same mission to face the COVID-19 in the other day. They coming saying, no, it's contradictory. We are questioning the legitimacy of people who don't choose or even vote in terrorism in a political party in the other day. This is why we say there is never ever platform that you will create in the other day. You'll never can hear what exactly the terrorism want in the other day. You just only keep blaming them as the person who take responsibility in 9/11, ladies and gentlemen. This is why we say it will really be bad in the other day. What is likely happening in our side of the house? People will also accept, at least in our side of the house, negotiate, like give them voice, talk, or communicate. Even just only in the parliament or the leader, it's better than not at all, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we consider it takes a long time, but we say US people also still rational. If you just, for example, terrorists also attacking US in the other day. This is why the Islamophobia is accessed at the very first place. In the moment when terrorists don't attack US itself, people from the US also the concept, okay, they are not that bad. We have to give them chance, or also degrading the Islamophobia that you always glorifying in your side of the house, ladies and gentlemen, because they have the burden to bet in the US in the other day. If you're just only pursuing to do the war in the other day. So what I already proved to you, we say prove to you why it's in line with the class or do the peace, and second of all, we can create the better outcome. We are really proud to propose. Time for judgment.
Okay, thank you for third proposition speaker. To close the substantive portion of this debate, I would like now to welcome the third opposition speaker to the center of the screen. Whenever you are ready, please state your preferred POI methods, count it down so we can start.
Am I audible? Hello, Kak. Am I audible?
It's very echoey. I'm not sure if this is me. I think this probably is also the same for everyone else. Is it possible for you to change device? Everyone else, is this echoey or are you guys?
How is it right now?
Ah, this is much better. Yes, yes.
Tunggu ya Kak, saya set up stopwatch dulu. And my paper. Oh my god, it's so messy. This is... I'm going to start. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. In this debate, the government and half the House have to prove to us why then there is an urgency and why the negotiation is the most effective way to actually decrease or stop or whatever the terrorism that actually happening right now, right? But in my second class letter, I'm going to prove to you why negotiation doesn't have any urgency or it's not effective, etc., etc. So before that, I have one clarification to make here. Okay, Gulf cannot fear the negotiation will run well because US isn't really good at making any of this negotiation. How we're going to say that? Election year. So focus on internal issue. All political leaders want to combat back terrorism. All political leaders want to fight towards those kind of combating terrorism because that is what the society want them, right? Because society actually hate terrorism. You want the proof? Hillary Clinton were bombarded when she had allegation of ties to the Middle East. So that's proof to you that US most likely is going to be too busy with the internal classes existing anyway. They will not actually those kind of incentive of making negotiation run well. But then, so most likely the political group like Hamas that they say wants to exist, it won't exist. Or even when they exist, it will become really hard for them to thrive on because most likely US will be the only supporter that they have. The rest of the world, other nation will still condemn them. So their attempt at Khalifa nation won't run well if terrorist is still the head of this particular organization. I will take POI later. But second of all, this is what the DPM told us, right? Terrorists don't feel guilty. So if they negotiate with them, so this is the thing. If we negotiate with them, we are confirming to the fact that they don't feel any kind of sense of guilty, right? They are rewarded for their violent action. What is those reward? Negotiation that you're going to give to them, financial support that you're going to interact of actually those kind of things. You are just confirming that their action is actually justifiable and it's not very that cruel anyway. If you want to raise awareness for happening, then you should punish them like how Osama bin Laden is bombarded in the headquarters and not giving them, rewarding them with any kind of negotiation. And last independent rebuttal I want to make is I want to point out here a contradiction that existing
On that
in
point.
their case. Letter. Here's the thing. Accept them. This is what the second this is what the first and second speaker keep on coming to us, right? They want to help. They want to help terrorists to actually achieve their goal to decrease the incentive to become terrorists. They want to help them by, and even their second and first speaker already consider the fact that they want to create a Khalifa country, right? So what do this mean? Unless US give them financial and political support, they will not receive this goal. But here's the thing, they will come to us and say that, oh no, we will not give them any kind of money. We will not help them financial support. So this is not only contradicting, but this also make me question why then the terrorists will feel satisfied. Those terrorists will then decrease the incentive when they don't feel satisfied when their goal hasn't been reached anyway, right? So that's it. So let's move on with the classes then. First classes is regarding the justification. Is it actually justified to negotiate? I will take later. Just chat me. I don't prefer unmute method of POI. So first is regarding the past and current surviving victim are taught in their suffering is negotiable. So it's justified to actually discuss with terrorism. Understand right now that the government side of this is actually very much already agree and consent to the fact that there is an existing victim that happened because of this kind of terrorism action. So in their side of the house, with those kind of awareness of those victims, they are still considering to justify their action by giving them negotiation. So if they really don't want to say, oh no, we still not support terrorism, it is very questionable. The moment they are opt out to exchanging dialogue or actually negotiation with those terrorists, mean that they already decrease or at least dismiss the harm and the kind of victim that already existing from those kind of criminal or terrorism action, right? So in the first kind of justification, we say that no, it is not justified at all. But in the second level of the justification, if we can prove to you that it's going to harm more casualty that will access in Gulf, we will want the justification in that. So we argue to you that, let's say that in the status quo where we immediately bomb them, we give them no kind of safe space them they can opt in and feel that they have the leverage to bargain, that they have a safety net, they can at least get a safety net for negotiation that they can get. And in their side of the house, we've already told you that this will incentivize the terrorism to increase their arms, to easier for them to gain resources because they want to be seen as the most powerful terrorist organization, for them to be negotiation first before the action. It's going to make them much more casualty to access in their side of the house. In their side of the house, negotiation will only exist and after there is a mass killing from each terrorist organization to make themselves feel, to make themselves look as the one who is going to be prioritized more to get this negotiation. So in terms of justification, first in regarding of the current and past surviving victim of this terrorism, and second in terms of much more harm that going to access in their side of those, we still thrive in this. But before I move on to my second class, sure.
Firstly, I think that Joe Biden is actually have the agenda to stop the prolonging war because there's the demand of society that won't stop the recruitment of military to go into Middle East. Secondly, I think that your case is very dismissive to our case because you kept stating casualties itself, but never prove why this casualties is justified on your side.
On our side of the house, the justification is there. The moment we bomb Al-Qaeda in their headquarters, it's not going to make them any kind of leverage for them to gain more victims, to gain more negotiation benefit from us. They will not have the incentive of, I can bomb 2 cities and gain 2 million because the US is going to be very afraid of me and bombarding those kind of cases. If Joe Biden want to stop the prolonging of war, we will do that. But the moment it's not like that, right? It's not accessible for us to just stop the negotiation because the terrorism threat is still there. The fact that ISIS will not feel satisfied anymore with what kind of mechanism they prove to you, they will still bombarding. So even if they want to question that, we said that it's still not achievable in the side of the house. But second class then, in regarding of effectivity and urgency. Mana tadi? Second class. Okay. Gov is only saying there could be a negotiation mechanism, but they haven't explained to us what is the incentive for politicians to sympathize with terrorism. Because I've told you in my POI, right? It is a political suicide to look like you are willing to justify any form of terrorism. So there will be little to no politician to actually speak in support of terrorism. But I also question to you, right? Is actually negotiation guarantee of like a real good result? The fact that Trump and North Korea already discussed prior of this regarding the whole nuclear thing, but North Korea is still crazy anyway, still do those kind of action anyway, cannot actually guarantee you that negotiation will be the most effective in their side of the house. But however, we also already proved to you, right, in our side of the house, this kind of negotiation will give them an incentive to actually becoming more horrible, gain more leverage, to actually be seen as the one who prioritized to be the most important to actually engage on by the government. But we also told you, this is going to boost more recruitment of terrorism if they are talking about political party. Understand this like this: if ISIS and whoever terrorist party then gain to political party, most likely they will be easier for them to recruit more terrorists because they want to more have political party member, right? So in their side of the house, this negotiation will be at the cost of that. So in terms of like the effectivity, not only it will boost more harm, but I also question what is the incentive of a politician to suddenly becoming much negotiable for them. Because right, I already proved to you that the fact that US is still right there, the fact that US society still have terrorism, mean that it's going to be political suicide for US to suddenly opt in an open dialogue for them. But also, I want to talk regarding, and lastly, I want to say what they actually been dismissing from our test of the house. They never actually injured on Alberto cases regarding the whole rationality that is not existing in terrorism. They also never injured to our worst case scenario, where it's most in their worst case scenario, where was like it's going to be very very severe. Negotiation will not work anyway. It's going to take so much time for them. So in terms of that, we oppose.
Right. Thank you for third opposition speaker. That is the end of the substantive speaks. I will now like to welcome the opposition reply speaker to start the closing remarks from opposition. To the center of the screen, whenever you are ready, count it down so we can begin.
Am I audible? Test. Am I audible?
Can you try again?
Okay.
Try again, sorry.
Am I audible?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think that what proposition champion is about how they are going to erase the narrative that is against the West and so on and so forth. Here's the thing. This can only be achieved under the soft house if the government if US actually can fulfill all of their demand and so on and so forth, in which they never actually engage to explain to us in the very first place. So we said that under the soft house, this narrative will still exist anyway. They never give us any analysis. This falls in the soft house. 3 things in my reply. First, justification. 2, effectivity. 3, the most important extension that they dismiss. First, justification. We give you several reasons here. One, we explain to you about how they are really irrational, about how they are too radicalized, about how they are really indoctrinated to the extent where they are killing a lot of people. They are plundering resources. They are taking people's lands and so forth. This is the justification that they clearly dismiss. They never actually engage with this justification. But second, we also explain to you about their whole mechanism about political party. We explain to you about why this is something that is not legitimate to begin with. We give you the analogy, for example, neo-Nazi, about how even though they are slightly the same with these terrorists, they are defending their own belief. For example, they are also killing a lot of people, but people still oppose them, and we still think that it is something that is illegitimate to give them this political party position to begin with. But secondly, regarding effectivity, firstly, their whole benefits is contingent upon the analysis of how these terrorists wanted to engage with their mechanism. Because their first speaker already established the fact that they do not trust US to begin with. All of this is really contradicting to begin with, right? But secondly, unless the government can completely fulfill all of the demand, then the anti-Western narrative will still exist anyway, because it will go from US invaded us to US giving us bad negotiation deals and so on and so forth. This is the thing that is worse than the south. But secondly, we already characterized to you about how irrational they are, how radical they are, how indoctrinated they are to the extent where they are as likely to actually want to engage with your peace deal, for example, about your negotiation and so on and so forth. They run away from this and say that, but it's a form of retaliation. Their killing is just a form of retaliation from US. I don't see any logical sense from this because let's just think here. They already kill a lot of people. They create a lot of victims, and they want to justify this by saying that it is a form of retaliation. It is not acceptable premise from the Sabta House. But number 3, we explain to you that we stick to the status quo. We will do bomb their base. We will do decapitation, take away their leader. We will torture them, and so on and so forth. But also, we also explain to you about why this is effective in the very first place. It is reducing their military power, and so on and so forth. But we also engage that even if in the very worst case scenario of this not being too effective, like for example, prolonging war, we are okay with it. We consider that maybe in the very worst case it will still happen. But we explain to you about how it's still even worse under the House. But if you want to deadlock these two issues about justification and effectivity, just deadlock it, because the third thing is the most important part in our side of the house. The most important extension, 2 things. 1, they will only create more victims to easier terrorist recruitment under the House. This is something that they clearly dismiss, right? First, the most important, how they will create more victims. We explain to you structurally about how they want to get this money. They want to get this deal of getting this political party, for example, to begin with. It will only create them, incentivize them to do arm race, for example. Big groups want money, want money and political party. Small groups also want the leverage to get that money and political party, meaning they are more likely to engage and kill more and more people to get the leverage so that they can get all of this benefit and negotiation from US to begin with. But second, we explain to you structurally about how in the South Africa, they're just going to create making terrorist recruitment easier, because more likely under South recruitment are still going to exist easier because of how they can use narrative that they are really strong and so on and so forth, and also about how they are likely to recruit more people because they want to get this political party to begin with. This is the thing that they clearly dismiss. Therefore, it is still standing. They cannot win this debate.
Right. Thank you for opposition reply. To close the debate as a whole, I would like now to welcome the government reply speaker. Take the center screen. Whenever you are ready, please count it down so we can begin.
Am I audible? Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. If opposition want to bring the harm of casualties, they have to explain to us why in their side of the house the casualties itself will be more likely to less, right? I think that when they say about how their worst case is that okay, people will be killed and they concede to this is not their worst case scenario. This is their best case scenario actually, because their mechanism is literally prolonging war, right? That's how you know this debate on. But and in the end of the day, there's no likelihood on how they will mitigate the harm that exists in their scenario, right? Even if they concede that the war will exist itself, but they have to explain 2 questions. Why is that actually impactful to the terrorism group itself? And second of all, why this trade-off is very worth it to consider the harm that is actually exists in their side of the house, right? I think it's not okay for people to keep dying just for the justification of US United States self-interest also, because this is exactly on how your side of the house will just prolonging the casualties in the end of the day. But secondly, they're talking about the trauma of 9/11, right? But they never explain to us why this is actually really exclusive and why the US itself will actually benefited from their mechanism, right? I think that their case is very contingent. On the benefit that will be touched for the Middle East and for United States itself that they can never prove from the very beginning. But let's also address few answers of the third opposition, because first they also say that the US will not cater the interest. I think we already clarified this on our POI by saying that Joe Biden actually have the interest, so that's why I think that this is also not significant. But secondly, when they're talking about how there's also the example of North Korea US negotiation, I think that this example is also invalid considering how US is also opt out from the denuclearization, and how they also never explain why this example is actually the same. That's why this also cannot be valid as their ground base of examples. But let's talking about the clashes itself. Why this rule goes to the proportion side of the house? First, on the moral ground. Second of all, likelihood to mitigate the harm, right? Okay, going to my first clash. Opposition bring the case of how they concede that it's okay to prolonging the war, it's okay to create the casualties, but they never explain to us why this is very justified and why this is morally okay to actually sacrifice life, right? But what our team proved to this? First, we proved to you how this is very immoral to begin with, because it is only fulfilling the selfish interest of United States. And second of all, we already provide to you the justification of security on how non-negotiation policy itself is created on the base of the security in Middle East and the United States itself. That means if you are actually want to create the security, security, and this policy cannot fulfill them, you have to look for another policy, right? This is how our models come in. But even if they want to say that there's the financial, they talking about the financial aid, I think that they are very assumptive, because this is not how our model looks like. They only look to the status quo, and this is actually also not going to be. That's why their whole extension regarding financial aid is also so out from this debate, not significant. But even if this you still want to talk about this, we think that we already proved to you how the legitimacy itself will also be the part of the control of terrorist behavior. Because at the very least, when you are at the moment, of legitimate stance itself, you will be more likely to have the supervision even from the international community, which we already explained how this counterbalance is very massive in our previous speakers. That's why in terms of moral ground, it should go to the proportion side of the house. But second of all, regarding the likelihood to mitigate the harm, even if they want to say that there is small terrorists to be highlighted, we already rebuttal this argument by saying that there's also the military bases of US in or Middle East. That's why this negotiation can still be proportionately directed to the small terrorists. But even if it is happened, we already give you the preventive measure of peacekeeping itself. At the very least, in our side of the house, you still get the benefit of social interest that doesn't want to go to war again, because it's already suffering through the budget and through how the military recruitment itself. We're very proud to win this debate. Stand for Team Jateng.
Right. Thank you for government reply speaker, and that concludes the debate as a whole. Teams may virtually shake hands, fist bumps, use emojis, say hi to people. Thank you all for the great debate. Now everyone could leave the breakout room and then adjudicate. We will